Hey everyone, I'm Majiin and welcome in to World Tour Weekly, your one-stop shop for all competitive Flesh and Blood news. We have a ton of things to go over today with 3 Battle Hardens, the last week of ProQuest season, a lot of pretty big changes in the banned and restricted announcement, and a bunch of high seas spoilers. So let's get into it. To start us off, let's talk a little bit about where we were at the beginning of last week. We had a few heroes getting dangerously close to Living Legend, namely Nu, Azalea, and Dash Inventor Extraordinaire. Florian was the head honcho as far as the ProQuest meta was concerned, and we were patiently waiting to see what would happen with the banned and restricted announcement. Now that the Battle Hardens have passed and ProQuest season is over, we can confirm that no other heroes are going to hit Living Legend just yet. With no more rated Classic Constructed events over the next 2 weeks, we know that all heroes currently in the format will be legal for US Nationals in Vegas. That doesn't mean that we won't see any shakeups in the meta by then, especially considering the recent banned and restricted announcement and the imminent release of High Seas. We have a ridiculous amount of things to cover today, so let's jump right into it with our weekend winners. With 3 different Battle Hardens last weekend, we have a lot of winners to talk about. Now, I apologize in advance if I mess up any of the names. We didn't have any coverage this weekend, so I couldn't just copy the announcers this time. First up is Battle Hardened Tokyo, which was won by Ryosuke Urase, playing the Scepter of Pain Florian build that we've seen be more and more popular over the last few weeks. The ProQuest Plus for this event was actually the Blitz format, and it was taken down by Takahiro Nishimura on Verdance. Battle Hardened Hartford was won by Jared Cantaldi, also on the Scepter of Pain Florian build. So far, all 3 of these winning decks are affected by the banned and restricted announcement, but we're going to go over that later. David Lee won Hartford's ProQuest Plus, piloting Nu Alluring Desire. Lorenzo Brambilla Pizzoni took down Battle Hardened Milan, also on Nu. Both of these wins gave her a bump in Living Legend points, but not quite enough to push her over the finish line. And finally, Filippo Pirazzoli won Milan's ProQuest Plus on Syndra Turkayev Retribution. So altogether, we have 2 Florian wins, 2 Nu wins, 1 Syndra win, and a Blitz Verdance win. Now let's see how that compares to the ProQuest meta in this week's Metagame Minute. This week, Florian showed that he is absolutely still the man with 24 wins. That's almost 3 times as much as the next highest winners. Syndra showed massive improvement from the previous weeks, making her the 2nd top deck of the weekend with 9 wins. Right behind her is Nu, who lost the 2nd place spot to her by only 1 win. I'm gonna be honest, I expected her to be a little bit higher this last weekend. Bang had a full 7 wins, making it a pretty good weekend for Draconic heroes on the whole. And right on their tail are the Wizards, with Kano getting 6 wins and Verdance with 5. Once we move past Florian, it seems like we have a bunch of heroes that are all more or less on the same footing, with a lot of them getting around the same amount of wins. It'll be really interesting to see how this changes after the banned and restricted announcement and High Seas comes out. Alright, now let's compare this to how the ProQuest season played out as a whole. Florian just barely passed Aurora to become the #1 deck of the ProQuest Singapore season with 123 wins compared to her 118. Nu grabbed about half of the wins the top decks had with 60, and after hers, the hero's win share drops pretty sharply. I'm still quite surprised by how spread out all the wins were after the top 2 decks. It really feels like the players had a lot of options available to them this season. What's really wild though is just how much the meta has been changing since the Pro Tour. With 2 top tier decks hitting Living Legend, the recent banned and restricted announcement, and the imminent release of High Seas, it seems like the Nationals meta is going to be vastly different from what we saw at Pro Tour London. Let's take a quick look at the Living Legend leaderboard now that the ProQuest season is all said and done. We still have quite a few heroes sitting at high totals, namely Dash, Nu, and Azalea. So it's looking like we still might see some drastic changes during Nationals season as well. Alright, we're going to skip over Card of the Week this week because we just have so much to talk about, and I'm a little worried I won't be able to fit it all into a reasonable video length. Let's talk about the banned and restricted announcement. First off, Classic Constructed. Count Your Blessings, Germinate, and Scepter of Pain are banned. This is a pretty big deal. Not only is Florian currently the meta king, but Count Your Blessings piles have been a pretty big part of the competitive ecosystem for a while now. Brian Gottlieb talked a little bit in the article about how Count Your Blessings is probably the most controversial card in Flesh and Blood's history, and I think he might be onto something there. He talks about how the community's pretty split on it, with some loving it and others like me hating it. Also mentioned is the strain that it puts on the development team, forcing them to check every new hero with a Count Your Blessings test. If a new hero is printed, they have to make sure it's not too good with CYB. If a new defensive tool is printed, they have to make sure it's not too good with CYB. It seems like it would be a pretty permanent strain on their testing resources moving forward, and I, for one, am glad that they'll have that time freed up to focus on what's really important: printing more blue zaps. Germinate getting banned was a pretty big surprise for me, and I imagine a lot of people as well. But apparently there's a card coming in one of the High Seas expansion slots that not only is a pretty suitable replacement, but is also very powerful with Germinate. I do like hitting this card though, as it probably makes the endgame spots against Florian a little bit more interesting if you're also a deck that's looking to take the game longer. Scepter of Pain is the last card in the Classic Constructed format to get hit with the ban hammer in this banned and restricted announcement. Like Kraken's Aether Vein, it was designed before the amp keyword and isn't really balanced around it. Things like turn after turn amp from Channel Millennium Tree pushes this card far outside the value window that it's supposed to exist in. It also allows Florian to play this super defensive stack up rune chance game plan that a lot of decks just can't deal with. With both Germinate and Scepter gone, I imagine that Florian will still be a strong deck in the meta, but not quite the powerhouse that he used to be. It'll be interesting to see which direction the deck moves in now that it's lost some of its more powerful rune chance stacking tools. Maybe we'll see it move in a more mid-rangey direction. Red Bonds of Ancestry was unbanned in the Classic Constructed format, which honestly scares me a little bit. I still have nightmares of Zen casting Bonds and banishing a Nether Bonds. I do trust the LSS team quite a bit though, so if they say it's okay for the card to come back, I'll believe them. Katsu players are probably losing their minds right now. In Blitz, we also have a pretty big shakeup with Channel Lightning Valley, Count Your Blessings, Flicker Wisp, and Storm Striders all getting banned. Brian goes on to talk about how Aurora and Wizard completely dominated the most recent Blitz skirmish season and how something needs to change. As much as I hate to admit it, he definitely has a point. Arcane damage on your opponent's turn seems to be completely fine if your opponent starts at 40, especially if it's only once a game, like for Verdance. When your opponent starts at 20 life, being able to do 9 damage on your opponent's turn gets pretty egregious. I am interested to see what the future of the Wizard class looks like in the Blitz format without Storm Striders. Perhaps it's finally time for Acilio to shine. Probably not though. Now, Living Legend is seeing some serious changes. Before I even talk about the actual bans and restrictions, I want to lay down some context for them. Chain and Starvo are currently head and shoulders above the rest of the competition in the format, but Living Legend is mostly just a fun format that you only play once in a while, so it's really not that big of a deal. Except, that's about to change. In the article, it's revealed that not only is Living Legend going to be one of the formats available for an upcoming ProQuest season, but it's also going to be one of the formats played in the World Championship. This means that the competitive health and balance of the format is a little bit more important than it was before. And this ban and restricted announcement seems to be the first step of getting it on the right track. First up, Crown of Seeds is banned. This is one of Starvo's best tools and also one of my favorite cards to play with, but it makes him just a little bit too consistent while also providing a solid defensive cushion. With the addition of all the Earth and Lightning cards from Rosetta, it makes sense to give him a bit of a hit. I imagine that having Starvo as one of the best decks in the Living Legend format is not just acceptable, but expected. However, I don't think we want him to be towering above the rest of the format. Now, on to Chain. To combat the Shadow Runeblade menace, Carrion Husk has been banned. Cull, Deadwood Dirge, and Succumb to Temptation have also been restricted. Chain definitely needed something like this. After Rosetta gave him a bunch of new toys to play with, his power level has been absolutely off the charts. You can't race him, you can't fatigue him, and with the addition of things like Cull and Succumb to Temptation, he also just happens to be one of the best disruption decks as well. Brian makes another good point, pointing out that since Chain sees almost all, if not the entirety of his deck every single game, restricted one-of cards like Cull will still have a large impact in his games. Hypothermia was also unrestricted as the final change to the Living Legend format. Not only does this help keep Chain in check a little bit, but it also gives a much needed power boost to Icelander and might let her creep back into the meta. I have been dying for an excuse to play her in the format, but before this change, she was a little bit too under the power level of the rest of the format for it to be worth it. I'm hopeful she'll be a lot better now, but honestly, if LSS wants her to be one of the top decks in the format, I think she might still need a little bit more help. Although, I'm really not sure what form that would take, to be honest. Commoner is also seeing another ban, with Reality Refractor leaving the format. If you haven't played Commoner recently, the Enigma Reality Refractor deck has been absolutely tearing it up. Doubly so since Ira, Chain, and Icelander got hit in the previous bans. This banning makes a ton more decks in the format playable, and I'm really excited to see how it shakes things up. We also have an update on how Living Legend points are going to be distributed moving forward. The first change is that fractional points will now be kept track of in the gem backend to stop excessive inflation of points from rounding up. The second and arguably more impactful change is that LL points are subjected to a multiplier that scales over the course of a hero's lifespan. During a hero's first year, the LL points they gain will be halved. In their second year, there will be no multiplier, and any year after that, they will gain 1.5 times the amount of points. This is to keep new heroes from immediately skyrocketing their way out of Classic Constructed, while still allowing a healthy amount of points to hit the Living Legend system. I'm a pretty big fan of this change for multiple reasons. The main one is that new players can feel a lot more secure investing in their first hero if they know that they have basically no chance of hitting Living Legend within the first year. The article leaves off by telling us that the next banned and restricted announcement is scheduled for Monday, June 30th. Last but certainly not least, let's talk about High Seas. We wrapped up the spoiler season for High Seas, and I am very eagerly awaiting the world premiere in Taipei this weekend to see the rest of the set revealed. I was originally just going to baselessly speculate on how the heroes are going to be played, but I honestly don't think we have time for that. So instead, I'm going to highlight 5 cards from the spoiler season that I'm really excited about. Number 1 is Burn Bear. Yep, surprise, I'm excited about the wizard card. Number 2, Loan Shark. Man, what a cool card. I love cards that give you a powerful effect but come with a specific sort of cost. I also love high rolling my opponents and playing permanents on turn 0, so this kind of hits both those things for me. Number 3 is Jolly Bludger. Anytime cards give you additional options, I am all for it. I also think that having the ability to tap cogs multiple times to boost your attack after blocks is kind of tricky and fun. What I am not excited about is this stupid flying boat stealing my energy potions. I just know it's going to happen to me, and I'm really not looking forward to it. Number 4, Barbed Barrage. I know it's not the most flashy Ranger card we've seen spoil this set, but again, I just love having options. I especially love options that are good against allies, so this one gets 5 stars from me. And finally, Chart the High Seas at number 5. This card reminds me a lot of Gaze the Ages, which is actually my favorite Flesh and Blood card of all time. It's a blue block 3 that doesn't have a super splashy effect on its own, but it provides a lot of utility and card selection. I also think the art's cool. I'll also throw in a little honorable mention here for Gold Kiss Rum. I like the idea a lot of a bankable go again token, but what really sold me on it is the flavor. You have to tap your hero in order to use it, but they don't untap at the end of the turn unless you're a pirate, insinuating that the non-pirate heroes need longer to recover from drinking an entire bottle of rum than the pirate heroes do. That's just good stuff. I, for one, can't wait to see how the new set turns out, and luckily for all of us, we have a pretty great group of casters for the world premiere in Taipei. Once again, don't forget to sign up for your local pre-releases from May 30th all the way to June 8th. I'm Majiin, and I'll see you next time on World Tour Weekly.